He thought instructing the housekeeper to keep me in the dark was enough. He flew his mistress to New York for a baby, assuming I was oblivious. But he did not realize I overheard exactly one phone call. I sold our house so fast the bank records could not catch up. When his plane landed, my marriage crashed in a way he never predicted. My name is Hannah Mercer. I am 33 years old, and I do not like surprises. In my line of work as a risk control specialist at Stonebridge Risk and Compliance, a surprise usually means someone dropped the ball. My job is to look at a stack of papers and find the one thing that does not fit. I look for the anomaly in the ledger, the clause in the contract that bleeds money, the silence where there should be noise. I am good at it because I am boring. I am practical. I believe that the most obvious answer is usually the true one. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it is rarely a swan in disguise. My life with Caleb was built on that same sturdy, unexciting foundation. We lived in a colonial-style house in the suburbs that had just enough lawn to be respectable but not enough to be a burden. We had a rhythm. I left for the office at 7:30 in the morning. I was home by 6. Friday nights were for takeout Thai food and a movie we usually fell asleep halfway through. It was a life of comfortable adequacy. Caleb Rowe was 39, 6 years my senior, and he wore his ambition like a tailored suit. He worked in consulting, a vague term that meant he was often at the airport and always on his phone. He was polished. He did not just talk about having kids or growing old together. He presented the future of our family like it was a quarterly projection. He would say things like, "Hannah, we need to optimize our assets before we expand the family unit." It was not romantic, but I thought it was safe. Safety is a currency I value. Then there was Marisol Vega. She came 3 days a week to keep the house from falling into the entropy that busy careers create. Marisol was in her late 50s, with hands that were always moving and eyes that missed nothing. I liked her because she was not a gossip. She cleaned the baseboards and polished the silver without asking prying questions about why we did not have a nursery yet. We had a silent agreement of mutual respect. The first hairline fracture in my structured reality appeared on a Tuesday. I tried to check the front door camera from my phone to see if a package had arrived, but the app denied me access. When I asked Caleb, he did not even look up from his laptop. "Oh." I updated the firmware and changed the master password. He said, "Just for security. I will text it to you later." He never did. 2 days later, the second crack formed. He stood in the kitchen, adjusting his tie in the reflection of the microwave. "I have to fly to New York tonight," he announced. "Urgent project." The client is spiraling. "New York," I asked. "For how long?" "Just the weekend. Maybe Monday." I looked at the bag sitting by the door. It was his leather weekender, the small one, not the hard-shell carry-on he took for business. He was not bringing his suit bag. Clients in New York expect suits. Clients in New York do not expect a man in a cashmere sweater and dark denim. That night, the air in the bedroom felt thin. Caleb was packing his toiletries, arranging them with surgical precision. "Hannah," he said, his back to me, "did we ever update the beneficiary on the house insurance or the deed trust?" I paused while folding a shirt. It was such a specific, dry question for 10 o'clock at night. "The house is in the trust, Caleb. You know that." Why he turned around, flashing that practiced boardroom smile, just thinking ahead. "With the market fluctuating, I want to make sure you are protected if anything happens." It sounded nice. It sounded responsible. But I work in risk. I know the difference between a safety check and a vulnerability assessment. He was not asking because he cared about my protection. He was asking because he wanted to know where the walls were. He was checking the perimeter to see if I was paying attention. The next morning, the day of his flight, the house felt cold. Caleb was rushing, checking his watch every 30 seconds. Marisol was in the kitchen, wiping down the granite island. As Caleb kissed my cheek, a dry, quick peck that felt more like a stamp of approval than affection, he grabbed his bag and headed for the garage. "I will call you when I land," he shouted over his shoulder. I stood there, holding my coffee mug. I turned to look at Marisol. Usually, she would offer a polite nod and continue her work. But today, she stopped. She held the rag still against the stone counter. She looked at me, and her dark eyes were wide, heavy with something she was physically holding back. It lasted only a second. Mrs. Rowe, she started, her voice trembling slightly. Do you need anything else before I go to the laundry room? No, Marisol. Thank you, I said. She looked at me for 1 second longer than normal, a look of pity that chilled me faster than the open door, before she looked down and swallowed whatever truth was trying to climb out of her throat. The house was too quiet after the garage door rumbled shut. I had forgotten my ID badge on the dresser. A rookie mistake for a risk controller. So I doubled back from the garage entrance. I was in the hallway, shoes off so I did not track dirt on the hardwood, which meant I was silent. Marisol was in the kitchen. I could hear the wet slap of a mop and the hum of her phone. She must have answered on speaker because her hands were wet. Marisol, did you find the envelope? It was Caleb. His voice was tinny, distorted by the speakerphone, but unmistakable. It was not his client voice. It was his crisis voice. Yes, Mr. Caleb, Marisol answered. Good, he snapped. Now listen to me carefully. Keep my wife in the dark. If she asks, I am in meetings all day. I am taking her to New York right now. It is for the baby. Do not let Hannah know anything. Do you understand? Taking her for the baby. My breath hitched. I stood frozen in the shadow of the doorframe. Marisol fumbled with the phone. I heard a frantic tap, and the line went dead. Her hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped the device into the bucket of soapy water. I stepped into the light. My face felt cold, masked in that professional numbness I wore when firing a vendor. Who was that? Marisol, I asked. My voice was soft, terrifyingly steady. Marisol jumped. She spun around, clutching the phone to her chest like a shield. Her eyes darted to the floor. It was nobody, Mrs. Rowe. Just a wrong number. Telemarketer. A telemarketer you call Mr. Caleb. She did not answer. The phone buzzed in her hand again, lighting up the screen. I stepped closer and looked down. The screen was cracked, but the caller ID was legible. C. Rowe, private. I see, I said. Thank you. Marisol. I turned and walked up the stairs. I did not run. Panic is for people who do not have a plan. I had a plan. I needed data. I went into the study and woke up our shared desktop. I opened the browser. Caleb was careful, but he was arrogant. He logged out of his work email, but he often left the family Gmail account open for utility bills. I clicked on the trash folder. There it was, deleted, but not purged. A flight confirmation from Delta Airlines. It was not a round-trip ticket for a consulting gig. It was a one-way ticket to John F. Kennedy International Airport, seat 4A, and there was a second ticket on the same itinerary, seat 4B, passenger name Sloane Hart. I opened the hotel reservation attached to the same thread. The hotel was not in the financial district where his firm usually stayed. It was on the Upper East Side. I pulled up a map. It was 2 blocks away from the unimaginable, the Verity Fertility Institute, baby. The word he had said on the phone. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I logged into our joint bank account. I needed to see the charges. I needed to see the Uber to the airport, the breakfast they surely bought. Settings, transaction notifications. Off. The toggle was gray. I clicked the history log. It had been disabled 14 days ago. He had been planning this for 2 weeks. He had blinded me deliberately. He did not just forget to tell me. He engineered a blackout. My phone sat on the desk. I picked it up and dialed Caleb. It rang once, twice, 3 times. You have reached the voicemail of... I hung up. A moment later, a text message appeared on my screen. Caleb can't talk. In a high-level meeting, don't worry. I will handle everything and be home soon. Love you. I stared at the glowing blue bubble. He was sitting next to her. He was probably holding her hand while the plane taxied. "Handle everything," I whispered to the empty room. I looked at the map again, the red pin hovering over the fertility clinic. "Handle what?" I said, my voice dropping to a register I barely recognized. Or handle whom I did not waste time scrolling through Instagram or Facebook. Amateurs look for tagged photos. Professionals look for the money. I sat at my desk and pulled every digital record I could access. Bank statements, insurance premiums, utility usage history. People lie, but ledgers do not. I found the anomaly in the credit card statement from 3 months ago. A recurring payment for a rental mailbox at a shipping center downtown. It was listed under business expenses, but the company name attached to it was a shell. It stood in Caleb's name. Why would a man with a corner office and a home mailbox need a P.O. box to receive things he did not want me to see? Next. I pulled the property records. I needed to be sure. I opened the digital file for our home address. The deed did not say Caleb and Hannah Rowe. It read, Hannah Mercer, trustee of the H.M. Revocable Trust. I had set it up 6 months before the wedding using an inheritance from my grandmother. I remembered the day I signed the papers. Caleb had laughed, swirling a glass of red wine. "You are so paranoid, Hannah," he had said, shaking his head. "We are getting married. What is mine is yours. You always worry way too much about the worst-case scenario. I just like things in order," I had replied. Now, staring at the document, I realized that my paranoia was not a flaw. It was armor. The house was mine. Technically, legally, irrefutably mine. He lived here because I allowed it. A soft knock on the doorframe broke my concentration. Marisol stood there. She had finished cleaning the kitchen, but she had not left. She was twisting her apron in her hands. "Mrs. Rowe," she whispered. Can I speak to you?" Of course, Marisol. She walked in and closed the door behind her. That was new. Marisol never closed doors. "I am sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I am so sorry I listened to him. He told me it was a surprise for you. He made me feel like I would be betraying the family if I told you." "It is okay," I said, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "You are telling me now." "He made me hide something," she said. She reached into her large tote bag and pulled out a stiff cardboard envelope. It was a FedEx package. "It came yesterday. He told me to put it in the back of the pantry, behind the extra flour, and that he would get it when he came back. But after that call today, I think you need to see it." I took the envelope. The return address had a logo, Verity Fertility Institute, New York. I ripped the tab. I slid the contents onto the mahogany desk. It was a complete intake packet. There was an appointment confirmation for tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. There was a receipt for a deposit of $5,000. And there was the patient name, typed clearly in black ink Sloane Hart. My husband was not just sleeping with her. He was building a biological future with her. I did not cry. Tears are a biological response to pain, and right now, I did not have time for pain. I had time for assessment. I took a blank sheet of legal paper and drew a line down the middle. On the left, I wrote facts. On the right, I wrote leverage. Fact: Caleb is in New York with a mistress. Fact: he is spending marital funds on fertility treatments. Fact: he thinks I am at home, oblivious. I picked up the last document in the stack. It was a non-disclosure agreement. It was standard legal boilerplate, designed to silence someone about a private medical arrangement. I scanned the bottom of the page. My blood ran cold. Sloane Hart had already signed it. Her signature was a looping, confident scrawl, but the line for countersigned by, the line where Caleb's name was printed underneath, was empty. Why would he carry an unsigned legal document to New York unless he was not planning to sign it himself, or unless he was planning to force someone else to sign it? Or perhaps he needed it for a transaction he had not quite closed yet. "Thank you, Marisol," I said, looking up at her. "You did the right thing." "What will you do?" she asked, her eyes wide with fear. I looked at the empty signature line again. "I am going to do what I do best," I said, picking up my pen. "I am going to audit him." I wrote one word under the leverage column. "Everything." "Marisol," I said, my voice dropping. "I need you to help me with one more thing. From this moment on, nobody keeps me in the dark anymore." She nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am. Anything." Sta. I looked at the house deed on my screen, then at the fertility invoice on my desk. The war had started, and Caleb had made the fatal mistake of leaving his supply lines undefined. Diane Kessler's office did not look like a place where marriages went to die. It looked like a place where corporations were restructured. It was all glass, chrome, and silence. Diane was a woman who spoke in bullet points and wore glasses that probably cost more than my first car. She specialized in high-asset divorces and trust litigation. She was exactly the kind of weapon I needed. I sat across from her, my hands folded on my lap. I had not slept, but I was not tired. I was running on the cold, hard fuel of adrenaline. "Let us review the assets," Diane said, sliding a thick file across the desk. "The house is the primary concern. I pulled the deed this morning. You were smart to set up the trust before the wedding. It is airtight. The property belongs to the Hannah Mercer Revocable Trust. Caleb has no equity claim to the principal asset, only a potential claim to marital appreciation, which is negligible given the market stagnation. So I can sell it." I asked. "Technically, yes. As the sole trustee, you have the power to liquidate. However, he is a resident. Eviction is messy. Selling is aggressive. I do not want to be aggressive. Diane, I want to be efficient. He is using my home as a base of operations for a life that excludes me. I want to remove the base." I pulled out my notebook. "I want a full credit freeze." I said, "I want all joint accounts locked. I want a forensic accounting of the last 3 years. And I want to change every password that protects my digital identity." Diane nodded, typing rapidly. Then she stopped. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She squinted at her screen. "Hannah," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "When did you refinance the house?" I frowned. I never refinanced. The rate is 3%. I would never touch that. Diane turned the monitor toward me. "There is a pending application for a home equity line of credit, a second mortgage. It was submitted online 4 days ago. The lender is a digital-first bank. Very fast approval process." I leaned in. The application was for $150,000. The stated purpose was home improvement. I did not authorize this. I said, "It is signed," Diane said, pointing to the bottom of the screen. There was a digital signature. It looked like mine. It was a copy of the signature I used on our tax returns, but the timestamp was from Tuesday, 10 in the morning. I was in a compliance meeting then. I was nowhere near a computer that could access this portal. "He forged it," I said. The realization hit me not like a slap, but like a heavy weight settling on my chest. He is trying to cash out the equity in my house to pay for whatever he is doing in New York. This is fraud, Diane said. Serious fraud. If we report this, he goes to jail. But the investigation will take months. The assets will be frozen. I looked at the screen. $150,000. That was the price of his new beginning, and he was stealing it from my past. "If I sell the house," I asked slowly, "what happens to this application?" Diane looked at me, a sharp glint in her eyes. "If you sell, the title company runs a search. They will see the pending lien. They will contact the lender to clear the title. The lender will require verification. The whole thing collapses, and if the sale goes through quickly, the bank will never release the funds to him because the collateral is gone. Then we sell." I said. "Immediately. Hannah, this is the nuclear option. You are essentially burning the ground he stands on." "No," I corrected her. "I am just turning on the lights. If he burns, it is because he covered himself in gasoline." I stood up. My legs felt steady. List it. Today. Cash buyers only. Quick close. I do not care if we take a hit on the price. Just get it done. Diane nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. I will call the broker. I walked out of the office and into the bright afternoon sun. I pulled out my phone. I had one more message to send. Me Marisol, I need you to help me with one big favor. We are going to be very busy. I paused, then added the line that had become my mantra. Me, from now on. Nobody keeps me in the dark. I hit send. Caleb thought he was playing a game of secrets. He did not know that in my profession. Secrets are just risks waiting to be managed, and I was about to manage him out of existence. I hired a broker named Marcus. He was not the type who baked cookies for open houses or put balloons on the mailbox. He was the type who moved high-value assets for people who did not want to be found. I gave him 3 conditions. I told him I wanted a cash buyer, a 14-day closing, and absolutely no for sale sign in the yard. I can do that, Marcus had said, tapping his tablet, but you will take a haircut on the price. I do not care about the price, I told him. I care about the speed. Once the listing agreement was signed digitally, I began to dismantle my life. It was a surgical extraction. I walked through the house with a roll of heavy-duty trash bags and a stack of plastic bins. If I bought it before the marriage, it went in a bin. If it was a gift from my family, it went in a bin. If it was something we bought together, the leather recliner he loved, the expensive espresso machine he never cleaned, the wedding photos in silver frames, it stayed exactly where it was. I was not moving out. I was erasing myself. I left the stage set for a play that had already been canceled. While I packed, Marisol was in the study. I expected her to be dusting, but she was sitting at the main computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a dexterity I had never seen. I am pulling the cloud logs for the doorbell and the internal cameras, she said without looking up. I am saving them to an external drive. I did not know you knew how to do that, I said, pausing with a stack of books in my arms. Marisol turned, a grim smile on her face. Before I cleaned houses, Mrs. Rowe, I managed a 40-unit building in Queens. I know how to back up a security system before someone thinks to wipe it. You are full of surprises, Marisol. We have to be, she replied. I moved to the master bedroom closet. There was a small wall safe behind Caleb's hanging suits. He thought he was clever, but he used his birthday as the combination. 4 digits, 0, 8, 2, 4. The door swung open with a heavy click. I ignored the cash and the watches. I reached for a small black USB drive tucked in the back corner. It had a piece of masking tape on it with handwritten letters INV Apex. My heart stopped. Apex. I knew that name. At Stonebridge Risk and Compliance, we had flagged a vendor named Apex Solutions just last month. They were billing for logistical support that could not be verified. It was a red flag for invoice padding, or worse, money laundering through local charities. And here was my husband, holding a drive with their name. This was not just infidelity. This was a felony. I did not put the drive in my computer. That would leave a digital fingerprint. Instead, I placed it in a sealed envelope and called a courier. I sent it directly to Owen Price, a forensic accountant Diane had recommended. I included a note, "Do not open on a networked machine. Check against Stonebridge vendor blacklist." My phone buzzed. It was a FaceTime request from Caleb. I took a deep breath, fixed my hair, and sat on the edge of the bed where the background looked normal. I answered. Caleb's face filled the screen. He looked tired. The background was a generic white wall, likely the hotel room. "Hey, honey," he said. "Sorry I have been so scarce. This project is a nightmare. How are you holding up?" I smiled. It was the best performance of my life. "I am fine. Caleb," I said. "Just a quiet night. The house is very still." "That is good," he said, and for a second he looked relieved. "I miss you. I will try to wrap this up soon." "Take your time," I said. "Finish what you started." I hung up. The moment the screen went black, my smile vanished. "The house is still," I whispered, "because it is not ours anymore." Marcus listed the property on the private MLS network at 6 o'clock that evening. By 9 o'clock the next morning, we had 3 offers. By noon, we accepted an all-cash bid from an investment group. The closing was set for 72 hours later. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the digital contract on my iPad. My signature looked sharp and final next to the buyer's. Caleb was in New York, thinking he was building a new life with a baby. He thought he was creating a legacy. He did not realize that 300 miles away, I was signing my name to create something entirely different. I was not giving birth to a child. I was giving birth to the truth. And unlike his lies, the truth was going to scream. The notification from the title company went out at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was an automated email sent to all registered occupants of the property regarding the scheduling of the final appraisal. I knew exactly when it hit his inbox because my phone began to buzz 10 seconds later. I let it ring 3 times. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to imagine the worst possible scenarios before I confirmed them. On the 4th ring, I picked up. "Hannah." He did not say hello. His voice was a jagged mix of panic and fury. "Hannah, what is this email? Why am I getting a notification about a title transfer appraisal? What are you doing?" I sat in the kitchen, watching the dust motes dance in the afternoon sun. I took a sip of water. "I am selling the house." "Caleb," I said. My voice was flat. It was the voice I used when I told a project manager their budget was rejected. There was a silence on the other end, heavy and thick. Then, the explosion. You can't," he shouted. "You cannot just sell our home while I am away on business. Are you insane? I am perfectly sane." I replied, "And it is not our home. It is the primary asset of the Hannah Mercer Revocable Trust. I am the sole trustee. I have the legal authority to liquidate assets as I see fit. You know that. This is not a business deal. This is my life. It is my house," I corrected him. He was breathing hard. I could hear the background noise of a busy street in New York. Horns, sirens. He was out on the pavement, likely pacing. "Hannah, listen to me," he said, his voice dropping to a desperate growl. "You have to stop this. You have to pull the listing. Right now. Why I asked. Give me one good reason. He did not say because I love you. He did not say because we have memories there. He did not ask why are you doing this to us. He went straight to the math. Because if the title transfers, the title search will run a full lien check. They will see the pending application." He stopped. The silence that followed was louder than his shouting. He had walked right off the cliff. I glanced at my phone screen. The recording app was running. Diane had told me to capture everything. "What application?" "Caleb," I asked softly. "What loan?" He stammered. The smooth, corporate operator was gone. In his place was a man watching his house of cards catch fire. "Nothing. It is nothing. Just some paperwork I started. But you have to stop the sale. You are ruining everything." "I am not ruining anything," I said. "I am just liquidating an asset." "Stop talking like a robot," he screamed. This is exactly why we are here." "Hannah, you are so cold. You are so clinical. You never made me feel like a husband. You made me feel like an employee." He was pivoting. It is a classic defensive strategy. When you are caught stealing, accuse the accuser of being mean. He wanted to make this about my character so we would stop looking at his crimes. "I tried to build a future for us," he continued, gaining momentum. "But you just want to control everything. You control the money. You control the house. You suffocate me." I waited for the dust to settle. I did not interrupt. I let his words hang in the air, vibrating with his hypocrisy. "I am controlling," I asked. "Yes, you always have been." "Caleb," I said, letting a dangerous edge creep into my tone. "You called our housekeeper yesterday. You told her to keep your wife in the dark. You told her to hide things from me. So, tell me, Who is the one trying to control reality? He gasped. The sound was sharp, like he had been punched in the gut. He did not know I knew about the call. He thought Marisol was still his accomplice. He started. Then his anger surged back, hotter and more reckless than before. I had to, because you wouldn't understand. You never understand. But she does. Sloane understands me better than you ever did. My hand tightened around the phone. There it was. He had said her name. Sloane. I asked, "Who is Sloane?" The line went dead. He had hung up, but it did not matter. The hook was set deep in his jaw. He thought he had ended the conversation, but he had just given me the headline for the next chapter of his destruction. Owen Price called me at 7 o'clock the next morning. He did not ask how I was sleeping. He knew better. "Hannah, the USB is a gold mine," Owen said, his voice crackling with the static of a poor connection. "But it is radioactive. Do not touch the original data." "What did you find?" I asked, putting my phone on speaker so I could continue packing the last of the china. "It is a textbook round-tripping scheme," Owen explained. "Caleb's company pays these vendors for services that never happen: consulting, logistics, data retention. The vendors take a 5% cut and send the rest back to accounts controlled by shell companies. And I found a recurring outbound payment code that matches your inputs. Which one? Code HART. It is listed as a medical retainer, paid to that clinic in New York. $5,000 a month, every month for the last year." I froze. A year. Sloane Hart was not just a mistress he picked up a few months ago. She was a payroll entry. She was the contact person for an investment vehicle that was washing dirty money through a fertility clinic. "Thank you, Owen," I said. "Send me the ledger." I hung up and looked at the empty kitchen. The pieces were shifting. This was not a story about a man who wanted a baby with a younger woman. This was a story about a man who needed a reason to move large sums of cash into a protected, private medical account where auditors could not look. The baby was not just a desire. It was a tax shelter. Marisol walked in, carrying the last box from the study. She saw my face and set the box down. "Mrs. Rowe," she asked, "is it bad? It is worse than cheating." "Marisol," I said, "it is business." Marisol hesitated, then looked at me with a hardened resolve. "There is something else," she said. "I did not want to hurt you before, but now, you need to know everything. A few months ago, before you came home from work, the landline rang. It was her. Sloane. Yes. She did not even pretend. She asked if you were home. When I said no, she laughed. She told me, 'Tell Hannah not to come home early tonight. Caleb is busy.'" My blood boiled, not with jealousy, but with the cold clarity of a prosecutor. She had been in my house, metaphorically, giving orders to my staff. She felt comfortable enough to command my schedule. I called Diane immediately. "Get me a meeting with Sloane," I said. "Not Caleb. Just her." "She will not meet you." "Hannah," Diane warned. "She is the other woman. They usually hide." "Tell her I have the unsigned NDA," I replied. "Tell her I am willing to trade it for the original financial disclosures regarding the baby. Tell her I am ready to walk away if the price is right." It was a lie, of course. I was never walking away. But Sloane was greedy, and she was arrogant. She would think I was a defeated wife looking for a payout. She agreed to meet in New York the next day. I boarded the first flight out of Dulles International Airport. I did not check a bag. I carried only my briefcase containing the forensic report and the unsigned legal documents. As the plane descended toward the gray skyline of Manhattan, I felt a strange sense of calm. I was not flying into a war zone to fight for my husband's heart. I was flying in to collect evidence in a jurisdiction he could not control. I landed at 2 o'clock. My first stop was not the meeting place. It was the lobby of the medical building where the clinic was located. I used my old credentials, a risk assessor badge that still looked official enough to fool a security guard, and asked for the billing department. I claimed I was verifying an insurance claim for patient Hart. The clerk frowned at her screen. "We do not have a prenatal file for a Sloan Hart," she said, tapping her keyboard. "We have her listed under the corporate wellness program, third-party billing. The payments are coded for biosecurity storage, not maternity." I thanked her and walked out into the cold New York air. The realization hit me like a physical blow. There might not even be a baby. The treatments, the hormones, the trips. It was all a sophisticated layer of smoke. They were using the privacy laws of a fertility clinic to hide the transaction of assets. Caleb had told me he was flying here for a child. In reality, he was flying here to secure his loot. He had tied himself to a lie so big that he could no longer see the edges of it. And he had just invited the one person who knew how to find the seams. "You wanted to keep me in the dark. Caleb," I whispered to the busy street. "But you forgot that I am the one who pays the electric bill." The coffee shop near Central Park was the kind of place that charged $12 for a latte and offered no privacy. It was perfect. I sat at a small round table, my back to the wall. Sloan Hart arrived 10 minutes late. She was younger than I expected, with the kind of polished, frantic energy that comes from trying too hard to look relaxed. She was not alone. A man in a charcoal suit followed her. He was unremarkable in every way, which made him dangerous. "This is Noah Brandt," Sloan said as they sat down. She did not offer to shake my hand. "He is my media consultant. I thought it would be best to have a witness." "A media consultant," I repeated, looking at Noah. He did not smile. He placed a notebook on the table and uncapped a pen. He did not look like he was there to spin a story. He looked like he was there to depose a suspect. "Let us not waste time," Sloan said, her voice tight. "Caleb told me everything. He said the marriage was over years ago. He said you were just roommates with a mortgage. I did not steal him. Hannah. I just gave him the family he wanted. I do not want to be the bad guy here." "You are not the bad guy." "Sloan," I said, reaching into my bag. "You are the distraction." I slid a single sheet of paper across the marble table. It was the copy of the non-disclosure agreement I had found in the pantry. Next to it, I placed the receipt for the $5,000 deposit and a printout of Caleb's flight logs. "What is this?" she asked. "Look at the bottom of the NDA," I said. "Look at the signature line." Sloan looked down. She frowned. "It is blank," she whispered. "Exactly," I said. "You signed it. You legally bound yourself to silence regarding his financial and medical arrangements. But Caleb, he never signed. That means he is not bound by anything. He can talk. He can blame. He can claim he had no idea what you were doing with those funds." Sloane's face went pale. The confident mistress evaporated, replaced by a terrified girl realizing she was standing on a trap door. "But he said it was for our protection," she stammered. "He said the baby needed privacy. There is no baby." "Is there?" Noah spoke for the first time. His voice was not the smooth baritone of a PR rep. It was the flat, interrogating tone of an investigator. Sloan flinched. She looked at Noah, then at me. "Who are you?" she asked Noah. "You said you were helping Caleb with crisis management." "I am," Noah said. He pulled a badge from his pocket and set it on the table. It was not a press pass. It was an identification card for a private financial intelligence firm that contracted with federal agencies. "I am managing the crisis of $20 million in fraudulent vendor payments moving through Caleb's accounts. And right now, Ms. Hart, your name is on the receiving end of the laundry cycle." The air left the table. Sloan looked like she was going to be sick. I didn't know about the fraud," she said, her voice trembling. "He just told me he needed me in New York. He said if we staged the fertility treatments, he could write off the travel and the housing as medical expenses. He said it was a loophole. He told me to stay here so the press wouldn't find out about us." "He did not keep you here to hide you from the press," I said calmly. "He kept you here to keep you away from the subpoenas. He needed a physical address in New York to validate the shell company's invoices. Sloane covered her mouth with her hand. Tears welled up in her eyes, ruining her mascara. He used me, she choked out. He used the idea of a family to wash money. He is a risk manager. Sloane, I said. And right now, you are his liability. When the audit hits, he is going to say you seduced him and embezzled the funds through the clinic. That is why he didn't sign the NDA. He needs to be able to testify against you. She stared at the empty signature line on the paper. The realization settled over her, heavy and absolute. I leaned forward. I can help you, I said, but I need trade. What do you want? She asked. I do not want him, I said. I want the data. I want every email, every text message, and every calendar invite he sent you regarding these medical payments. If you give them to me, I will hand them to Noah. You become a cooperating witness instead of a co-conspirator. Sloane looked at Noah. He nodded once. A grim confirmation. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped it. She unlocked it and slid it across the table to me. Take it, she whispered. Take all of it. Just don't let him destroy me. I took the phone. I did not feel triumphant. I felt the cold satisfaction of a balanced equation. I stood up, leaving the unsigned NDA on the table as a souvenir. Thank you, Sloane, I said. You should probably call a lawyer, a real one. I walked out of the coffee shop and onto the busy sidewalk. I did not win because I fought for my marriage. I won because I realized that in a relationship built on lies, the most dangerous weapon is the receipts. I had the fingerprints of the truth in my pocket, and Caleb Rowe was about to find out that his wife did not just keep the books, she closed them. The moment Caleb realized I was in New York, the gloves came off. He did not call me to ask why I was there. Instead, he unleashed his lawyers. My phone lit up with a high-priority email notification from a firm I did not recognize. The subject line was bold and aggressive. Cease and desist and notice of misappropriation of marital assets. He was accusing me of stealing the house from under him. He claimed I was mentally unstable and acting out of malice to destroy his livelihood. I did not panic. I forwarded the email to Diane with a single note, Execute Protocol B. Within an hour, Diane fired back a temporary protective order and a formal demand for an investigation into the electronic signature on the loan application. We froze all communication. If he wanted to talk to me, he had to go through a billing hour, but Caleb had managed to throw a wrench in the gears. The buyers for the house paused the transaction. Their title company had flagged the second mortgage application. It was a cloud on the title, and no investor wants to buy a property that is technically being used as collateral for a pending loan. The deal was teetering on the edge of collapse. Caleb thought he had won. He thought he had trapped me in a legal deadlock that would force me to negotiate. He was wrong. He forgot that every digital action leaves a footprint. I contacted the fraud department of the online lender he had used. I did not ask them to believe me. I asked them to check the metadata. They ran a trace on the IP address used to submit the loan application. It did not come from our home in the suburbs. It did not come from my office. It originated from a secure Wi-Fi network at the Pierre Hotel in Manhattan, time-stamped exactly when Caleb was supposedly in a client meeting. The lender immediately flagged the application as fraudulent identity theft. The cloud on the title evaporated. The sale was back on. Desperate, Caleb tried to find a weak link. He called Marisol. He tried to charm her, then he tried to bully her. He told her that if she did not testify that she saw me sign those papers, he would make sure she never worked in this town again. Marisol told me about the call later, her voice shaking with rage. I told him, she said, I do housework, Mr. Caleb. I do not do dirty work. Then I hung up on him. With the house sale secured, I launched my own offensive. I did not go to the tabloids. I went to the one place that mattered more to Caleb than his reputation, his money. I compiled the forensic accounting report, the IP trace log, and the vendor analysis of Apex Solutions. I sent the entire package to the chief legal officer of the investment firm Caleb was partnering with. I flagged it as a third-party risk assessment. It was proper corporate procedure. It was a whistleblowing act that they could not ignore without becoming liable themselves. The impact was immediate. Caleb was summoned to an emergency compliance meeting. I knew he was panicked because 40 minutes later, there was a violent pounding on my hotel room door. I looked through the peephole. Caleb was there. His tie was loosened, his hair was a mess, and his face was slick with sweat. He looked like a man who was watching the water rise above his nose. "Hannah," he screamed, hammering the wood with his fist. "Hannah, I know you are in there. Open the door. We need to talk. We need to fix this." I stood safely on the other side. I did not unlock the deadbolt. I did not touch the handle. "Hannah, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "We are husband and wife. You owe me a conversation. Stop hiding." I leaned close to the door, ensuring my voice would carry through the gap. "You wanted me in the dark, Caleb," I said, my voice cold and steady. "So now, you can talk to me in the dark." I walked away from the door and sat in the armchair by the window, watching the city lights of New York. The pounding eventually stopped. Heavy, defeated footsteps retreated down the hallway. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Diane. Diane. "It is done. The investment firm is hosting their annual fundraising gala tomorrow night at the Met. Caleb is still scheduled to speak as the keynote. He thinks he can charm his way out of it." I waited for the second bubble to appear. Diane. "But he is wrong. The FBI Financial Crimes Division just requested a guest pass." The gala was held in a ballroom that smelled of expensive perfume and old money. Caleb stood on the raised platform, bathed in a golden spotlight, holding a crystal flute of champagne. He looked like the perfect husband, the perfect executive. He was giving a toast about the importance of family values and corporate transparency. He actually used the word integrity without choking on his drink. The audience applauded, unaware that the ground beneath them was about to open up. I did not interrupt his speech. That would have been emotional, and I was done with emotions. I waited in the private executive suite behind the stage. The room was quiet, air-conditioned to a chill. I was not alone. Diane was there, tapping her pen on a leather folder. Owen Price sat with his laptop open, the screen glowing with complex spreadsheets. And Noah Brandt stood by the door, arms crossed. When Caleb walked off stage, flushed with adrenaline and applause, he was guided directly into our room by a security guard who was not actually a security guard. Caleb stopped dead. The smile slid off his face like wet paint. "Hannah," he asked, his voice wavering, "what are you doing here? Who are these people?" I did not stand up. I simply pointed to the table. In the center lay the black USB drive, the log of the IP address from the Pierre Hotel, and the forensic report on the forged loan application. "We are not here to talk about our marriage, Caleb," I said. "We are here to talk about the math." Before he could bluster or deny, the door opened again. 2 men in dark suits entered. They flashed badges that did not belong to hotel security. They belonged to the Financial Crimes Division. "Mr. Rowe," one of the agents said, "we are executing a freeze on all assets associated with Apex Solutions and the associated charitable trusts." Caleb turned pale. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a terror that finally looked genuine. He thought the secret was the baby. He thought the scandal was the affair. He did not realize that the affair was just the wrapping paper on a $20 million money laundering scheme. The fertility clinic payments were not for a child. They were structuring fees to move cash into untraceable medical accounts. You turned me in," he whispered. "I reported a compliance violation. I corrected him." Then, the final piece of the puzzle walked in. Sloane stood in the doorway. She refused to look at Caleb. She walked straight to the agent and handed over her unlocked phone. "The texts are all there," Sloane said, her voice shaking but clear. "He instructed me to falsify the invoices. He told me to keep Hannah in the dark to buy time while he moved the funds." Caleb looked at Sloane, then back at me. His face twisted into a snarl. "Is this why you sold the house?" he hissed, stepping toward me before Noah blocked his path. "You sold my home just to get revenge. You wanted to hurt me that bad." I stood up then. I looked him in the eye. "No, Caleb. I did not sell the house to take revenge. I sold the house to stop you from using it as a weapon." Diane slid a paper across the table. It was the proof of the second mortgage application, the one he had forged my signature on. It was not just an application, it was an emergency plug. He had a hole in his ledger, a debt he needed to cover within 48 hours to keep the scheme running. He had tried to leverage our home to save his criminal enterprise. "If I had not sold the house," I said, "that lien would have gone through. You would have dragged me and my trust down with you. By the time I signed the closing papers this morning, the title was clean. The money is in my account, and you have no collateral left." Caleb slumped into a chair. The agents moved in to escort him out the back service entrance. He would not be going back to the gala. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank. The wire transfer from the sale had cleared. The funds were safe, locked away in a new trust where he could never touch them. I picked up my bag. I did not look back at the man I had married. He was just a bad investment I had finally written off. I walked out of the hotel and into the cool night air of New York City. The street noise was loud and chaotic, but to me, it sounded like music. I pulled out my phone and sent one final text to Marisol. "Me, the darkness is over." I turned off my phone. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the sharp, gasoline-scented air. It was cold, it was real, and for the first time in a long time, I was free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me where you are tuning in from and what you would have done in Hannah's shoes. Please subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button so we can share more stories like this with the world.